The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, The Free Soul, lecture delivered by Swamiji in New York in 1896, Part 2. I was once traveling in the desert in India. I traveled for over a month and always found the most beautiful landscapes before me. Beautiful lakes and all that. One day, I was very thirsty and I wanted to have a drink at one of the lakes. But when I approached that lake, it vanished. Immediately, with a blow, came into my brain the idea that this was a mirage about which I had read all my life. And then I remembered and smiled at my folly that for the last month, all the beautiful landscapes and the lakes I had been seeing were this mirage. But I could not distinguish between them. The next morning, I again began my march, and there was a lake and a landscape, but with it immediately came the idea this is a mirage. Once known, it had lost its power of illusion. So, this illusion of the universe will break one day. The whole of this will vanish, melt away. This is realization. Philosophy is no joke or talk. It has to be realized. This body will vanish, this earth and everything will vanish. This idea that I am a body or mind will for some time vanish. Or if the karma is ended, it will disappear, never to come back. But if one part of the karma remains, then as a potter's wheel, after the potter has finished the pot, will sometimes go on from the past momentum. So this body, when the delusion has vanished altogether, will go on for some time. Again this world will come, men and women and animals will come, just as the mirage came the next day, but not with the same force. Along with it will come the idea that I know its nature now, and it will cause no bondage, no more pain, nor grief, nor misery. Whenever anything miserable will come, the mind will be able to say, I know you as hallucination. When a man has reached that state, he is called Jivan Mukta, living free. Free even while living. The aim and end in this life for the Jnana Yogi is to become this Jivan Mukta, living free. He is Jivan Mukt who can live in this world without being attached. He is like the lotus in the leaves in the water, which are never wetted by the water. He is the highest of human beings, nay, the highest of all beings, for he has realized his identity with the Absolute. He has realized that he is one with God. So long as you think that you have the least difference from God, fear will seize you. But when you have known that you are He, there is no difference, entirely no difference. That you are He, all of Him, and the whole of Him, all fear ceases. There, who sees whom, who worships whom, who talks to whom, who hears whom. Where one sees another, where one talks to another, where one hears another, that is little. Where none sees none, where none speaks to none, that is the highest. That is the greatest. That is the Brahman. Being that, you are always that. What will become of the world then? What good shall we do to the world? Such questions do not arise. What becomes of my gingerbread if I become old? Says the baby. What become of my marbles if I grow? So I will not grow, says the boy. What will become of my dolls if I grow old? Says the little child. It is the same question in connection with this world. It has no existence in the past, present or future. If we have known the Atman as it is, if we have known that there is nothing else but this Atman, that everything else is but a dream with no existence in reality, then this world with its poverties, its miseries, its wickedness and its goodness will cease to disturb us. If they do not exist, for whom and for what shall we take the trouble? This is what the Jnana Yogis teach. Therefore, dare to be free, dare to go as far as your thought leads, and dare to carry that out in your life. It is very hard to come to Jnana. It is for the bravest and most daring, who dare to smash all idols, not only intellectual but in the senses. This body is not I, it must go. All sorts of curious things may come out of this. A man stands up and says, I am not the body, therefore my headache must be cured. But where is the headache if it is not in this body? Let 1,000 headaches and 1,000 bodies come and go. What is it to me? I have neither birth nor death. Father or mother I never had. Friends and foes I have none. Because they are all I am my own friend. And I am my own enemy. I am existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. I am he, I am he. If in 1,000 bodies I am suffering from fever and other ills, in millions of bodies I am healthy. If in 1,000 bodies I am starving, in another 1,000 bodies I am feasting. If in thousands of bodies I am suffering misery, in thousands of bodies I am happy. Who shall blame whom? Who praise whom? Whom to seek, whom to avoid? I seek none, nor avoid any, for I am all the universe. I praise myself, I blame myself, I suffer for myself, I am happy at my own will, I am free. This is the Jnani, the brave and the daring. Let the whole universe tumble down, he smiles and says it never existed. It was all hallucination. He sees the universe tumble down. What was it? Where has it gone? Before going into the practical part, we will take up one more intellectual question. So far, the logic is tremendously rigorous. If a man reasons, there is no place for him to stand until he comes to this, that there is but one existence and that everything else is nothing. There is no other way left for rational mankind but to take this view. But how is it that what is infinite, ever present, ever blessed, existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, has come under such delusions? It is the same question that has been asked all the world over. In the vulgar form, the question becomes, how did sin come into this world? This is the most vulgar and sensuous form of the question. And the other is the most philosophical form, but the answer is the same. The same question has been asked in various grades and fashions. But in its lower forms, it finds no solution, because the stories of apples and serpents and women do not give the explanation. In that state, the question is childish, and so is the answer. But the question has assumed a very high proportion now. How did this illusion come? And the answer is as fine. The answer is that we cannot expect any answer to an impossible question. The very question is impossible in terms. You have no right to ask that question. Why? What is perfection? That is which is beyond time, space and causation. That is perfect. Then you ask how the perfect became imperfect. In logical language, the question may be put in this form. How did that which is beyond causation become caused? You contradict yourself. You first admit that it is beyond causation and then ask what causes it. This question can only be asked within the limits of causation. As far as time and space and causation extend, so far can this question be asked. But beyond that, it will be nonsense to ask it, because the question itself is illogical. Within time, space and causation, it can never be answered. And what answer may lie beyond these limits? can only be known when we have transcended them. Therefore, the wise will let this question rest. When a man is ill, he devotes himself to curing his disease without insisting that he must first learn how he came to have it. There is another form of this question, a little lower, more practical and illustrative. What produced this delusion? Can any reality produce delusion? Certainly not. We see that one delusion produces another, and so on. It is delusion always that produces delusion. It is disease that produces disease, and not health that produces disease. The wave is the same thing as the water. The effect is the cause in another form. The effect is delusion, and therefore the cause must be delusion. What produced this delusion? Another delusion, and so without beginning. The only question that remains for you to ask is, do not break this monoism, because you get two existences in the universe, one yourself and the other the delusion. The answer is, delusion cannot be called an existence. Thousands of dreams come into your life but do not form any part of your life. Dreams may come and go, they have no existence. To call delusion existence will be sophistry. Therefore, there is only one individual existence in the universe, ever free and ever blessed, and that is what you are. This is the last conclusion reached by the Advaitas. It may then be asked, what comes of all these various forms of worship? They will remain. They are simply groping in the dark for light, and through this groping, light will come. We have just seen that the self cannot see itself. Our knowledge is within the network of Maya, and beyond that is freedom. Within the network there is slavery, it is all under law. Beyond that there is no law. So far as the universe is concerned, existence is ruled by law, and beyond that is freedom. As long as you are in the network of time, space and causation, to say that you are free is nonsense. Because in that network, all is under rigorous law, sequence and consequence. Every thought that you think is caused, every feeling has been caused. To say that the will is free is sheer nonsense. It is only when the infinite existence comes, as it were, into this network of Maya that it takes the form of will. Will is a portion of that being caught in the network of Maya, and therefore free will is a misnomer. It means nothing, sheer nonsense. So is all this talk of freedom. There is no freedom in Maya. Everyone is much bound in thought, word, deed and mind as a piece of stone or this table. That I talk to you is as rigorous in causation as you listen to me. There is no freedom until you go beyond Maya. That is the real freedom of the soul. Men, however sharp and intellectual, however clear they may see, the form of the logic that nothing here can be free, are all compelled to think that they are free. They cannot help it. No work can go on until we begin to say that we are free. It means that the freedom we talk about is the glimpse of the blue sky through the clouds, and that is the real freedom. The blue sky itself is behind. True freedom cannot exist in the midst of this delusion, this hallucination, this nonsense of the world, this universe of the senses, body and mind. All these dreams without beginning or end, uncontrolled or uncontrollable, ill-adjusted, broken, inharmonious, form our idea of this universe. In a dream, when you see a giant with 20 heads chasing you and you are flying from him, you do not think it is inharmonious. You think it is proper and right. So is this law. All that you call law is simply chance without meaning. In this dream state, you call it law. Within Maya, so far as the law of time, space or causation exists, there is no freedom, and all these various forms of worship are within this Maya. The idea of God and the idea of brute and the man are within this Maya. and are as such are equally hallucinations. All of them are dreams. But you must take care not to argue with some extraordinary men of whom we hear at present time. They say that the idea of God is a delusion, but the idea of the world is true. Both ideas stand or fall by the same logic. He alone has the right to be an atheist who denies this world as well as the other. The same argument is for both. The mass of delusion extends from God to the lowest animal, from a blade of grass to the Creator. They stand or fall by the same logic. The same person who has falsity in the idea of God ought to see it in the idea of his own body or his own mind. When God vanishes, then also the body and mind, and when both vanish, that which is real existence remains forever. There the eyes cannot go, nor the speech, nor the mind. We cannot see it, neither know it. And we now understand that so far as speech and thought and knowledge and intellect go, all is within this Maya, within bondage. Beyond that is reality. There is neither thought, nor mind, nor speech can reach.